Emma sat at her small wooden desk in the tiny London office where she worked as a data entry clerk. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting a harsh white glow on her computer screen. She had been staring at the same spreadsheet for 20 minutes, but her mind kept wandering to the stack of unpaid bills sitting in her cramped studio apartment. The numbers in her online banking app told a story she knew by heart. After paying rent, utilities, and buying the cheapest groceries she could find, there was barely enough left for a cup of coffee. She had been working 2 jobs for the past year, the office job during the day and cleaning offices at night, but it never seemed to be enough. London was expensive, and Emma felt like she was drowning in a sea of financial stress. Her phone vibrated against the desk, breaking her thoughts. A text message from her mum appeared on the cracked screen. Emma's stomach tightened as she read. The words, "Emma, love, your Nan is very sick. The doctors say she might not have much time left. Can you come home to Manchester? We need you here." Emma's hands began to shake as she read the message again. Her Nan, Rose, was the woman who had practically raised her when Emma was 8 years old. Her parents had gone through a difficult divorce, and both had struggled with their own problems. Rose had stepped in without hesitation, taking Emma into her small house in Manchester and giving her the love and stability she needed. Rose had taught Emma how to bake cookies, how to tend a garden, and most importantly, how to be strong when life got difficult. She had been Emma's rock, her safe harbor in every storm. Now, at 85 years old, Rose was lying in a hospital bed, and Emma was 3 hours away in London. Emma hadn't been home in 2 years. Every time she thought about visiting, she looked at her bank account and felt ashamed. Train tickets to Manchester cost more than she could afford, and she didn't want her family to see how badly she was struggling. She had moved to London with big dreams of building a successful career, but those dreams had been replaced by the harsh reality of just trying to survive. At 30 years old, Emma felt like a failure. Her school friends were buying houses, getting married, and building the lives they had planned. Emma was sharing a studio apartment with mice and counting pennies to buy food. She had been too embarrassed to tell her family how difficult things had become. She opened her banking app with trembling fingers. The balance showed just enough money for a train ticket home, but that would leave her with almost nothing for the rest of the month. Emma stared at the numbers, feeling torn between her financial fears and her love for her Nan. The new travel requirements for 2025 made everything seem more complicated. She had heard about the digital health passes that travelers needed, the advanced security checks at train stations, and the biometric scanning systems. Emma had never been good with technology, and the thought of navigating all these new procedures while feeling emotional made her anxiety spike. But as she sat in that stale office, surrounded by the hum of computers and the chatter of co-workers, Emma realized that none of the new travel rules mattered. Her Nan was dying, and Emma needed to be there. She had already lost her precious years by staying away, and she couldn't lose any more time. With shaking hands, Emma clicked the button to purchase a train ticket. The money left her account instantly, leaving her with just enough for basic groceries until her next paycheck. She would figure out how to manage later. Right now, love was more important than money. Emma quickly packed her small canvas bag with a few changes of clothes. She grabbed her phone charger, her wallet, and a photo of her and her Nan from when she was 10 years old. In the picture, they were both laughing in Rose's kitchen, covered in flour from baking bread together. Emma's eyes filled with tears as she looked at the happy memory. She left work early, telling her supervisor that she had a family emergency. As she walked to the train station, Emma felt scared about facing her family after staying away for so long. They would ask questions about her life, and she would have to admit that she was struggling. But underneath the fear, she felt something else, a pull toward home that was stronger than her shame. The train to Manchester was waiting at the platform. Emma took a deep breath and stepped aboard. Love was calling her home, this time. She was ready to answer. Emma stepped off the train at Manchester Piccadilly station and immediately felt overwhelmed. The familiar station she remembered from her childhood had been transformed with screens, scanners, and digital displays everywhere. People moved confidently through what looked like a maze of new technology. But Emma stood frozen near the platform, clutching her small bag. Her phone buzzed with notifications about digital check-ins and health monitoring requirements. The screen showed messages about biometric verification and travel authorization that she didn't understand. Emma tried to follow the signs, but everything seemed to require scanning codes or using apps she had never downloaded. She watched other passengers tap their phones against various devices and walk through glass barriers that opened automatically. Emma approached one of the scanners hesitantly, holding her phone up like she had seen others do. But nothing happened. The screen flashed red and made a beeping sound that made her jump back. Oh no. Emma whispered to herself, feeling tears start to form in her eyes. She was already emotional about her nan being sick, and now she couldn't even figure out how to leave the train station. People walked past her quickly, focused on their own journeys. And Emma felt more alone than ever. Need some help, dear? Asked a gentle voice behind her. Emma turned round to see an elderly woman with silver hair and kind blue eyes. She wore a bright blue vest with a name tag that read Mary, station volunteer. Her face was lined with wrinkles, but her smile was warm and genuine. "I'm trying to figure out these new travel rules," Emma said, her voice shaking. "I haven't been home in 2 years, and everything looks so different. I can't make any of these machines work." Mary stepped closer and patted Emma's arm gently. "Don't worry. Love, I help people every day with exactly this problem. These new systems are meant to keep us safe and make travel easier once you know how to use them. Let me show you." Mary took out her own phone and demonstrated how to download the required travel app. She spoke slowly and clearly, explaining each step as if Emma were learning something completely new. Her patience was infinite, and she never made Emma feel stupid for not understanding. "You see, dear, you just need to scan this code here," Mary said, pointing to a QR code on the wall. "Then the app will guide you through the rest. It's like having a helpful friend in your pocket." As Mary helped Emma through the digital processes, they began to talk. Emma learned that Mary had been volunteering at the station for 5 years, ever since her husband George had passed away from cancer. Mary explained how she had felt completely lost after 43 years of marriage. "I was so lonely," Mary said, her voice becoming softer. "George and I did everything together. When he died, I didn't know what to do with myself. I would sit in my house all day, just staring at his empty chair." Emma listened carefully as Mary continued her story. Mary had decided to volunteer at the station because she wanted to help people, but she admitted that it helped her just as much as it helped others. "Helping people like you gives my life meaning again," Mary said. "Every person I help remind me that I still have something valuable to offer the world. We all need to feel needed, don't we?" Emma felt a lump in her throat as she realized how much she had in common with Mary. Both of them had been struggling with loneliness and feelings of worthlessness. Emma had been isolated by her financial problems, while Mary had been isolated by grief. But the pain was similar. "I thought I was the only one having such a hard time," Emma said quietly. "Everyone else always seems to have everything figured out." Mary chuckled softly. "Oh, my dear, that's just not true. Most people are struggling with something. The difference is that some people are better at hiding it than others. The businessman hurrying past us might be worried about losing his job. The young mother over there might be struggling to make ends meet just like you. Emma looked round the station with no eyes. She had been so focused on her own problems that she hadn't considered that other people might be fighting their own battles. The confident-looking travelers she had been watching might have their own fears and worries hidden beneath the surface. Mary finished helping Emma with the digital check-in process and walked her to the stationed exit. Before they parted ways, Mary gave Emma a gentle hug. Remember, love, asking for help isn't a sign of weakness. It's a sign of wisdom. And sometimes, the people who seem strongest are the ones who need help the most. Emma realized she wasn't alone in her struggles. Sometimes the people who seem strongest are fighting their own battles too. Emma found a seat by the window on the local train that would take her to her small hometown outside Manchester. She placed her bag on the seat next to her and watched the city buildings slowly give way to green fields and small villages. The rhythmic sound of the train on the tracks was comforting, but her mind was still racing with worry about her nan and anxiety about seeing her family again. A young man approached her carrying a small, worn backpack. He looked to be about her age, maybe a year or two older, with dark hair that needed a cut and tie-dyes. His jacket was old and had a small tear near the pocket, but it was clean and he wore it with quiet dignity. "Excuse me, is this seat taken?" he asked politely, pointing to the seat across from Emma. "No, please sit," Emma replied, moving her bag to make room. The young man settled into his seat and looked out the window at the passing countryside. Emma noticed that his hands were rough, like someone who had done physical work, and his shoes were worn but well-maintained. Something about his quiet manner made her feel less alone. After a few minutes of comfortable silence, he turned to her with a tired but genuine smile. "Going home too?" he asked. Emma nodded. "My nan is sick. I haven't been home in 2 years." She paused, then added, "I'm Emma. By the way, James," he replied, "and I understand completely. I've been away for 3 years, lost my job, felt like a complete failure. But my dad had a heart attack last week. Family is family, right?" Emma felt a surge of relief at meeting someone who understood her situation. "I'm so sorry about your dad. Is he okay?" James nodded slowly. "He's stable now, thank goodness. But it made me realize how much time I've wasted staying away because I was embarrassed about my life." He looked down at his hands. "I've been sleeping on friends' couches for months, trying to find steady work. I didn't want my parents to see me like this." Emma felt tears prick her eyes. "I know exactly how you feel. I've been working 2 jobs in London just to pay rent, and I still can barely afford food. I was too ashamed to come home because I thought everyone would judge me for not having my life together." They talked for hours as the train carried them through the English countryside. James shared his story of working in construction until his company went out of business. He had tried to find similar work, but the economy was tough, and he had been taking whatever jobs he could find, washing dishes, delivering packages, cleaning offices. Emma told him about her struggles with the high cost of living in London, how she had moved there with dreams of building a career, but had instead found herself trapped in a cycle of low-paying jobs and expensive rent. She described the loneliness of living in a big city where she couldn't afford to do anything fun or social. "The worst part," Emma said, "watching a farmer working in his field, is feeling like everyone else figured out some secret to adult life that I missed. Like there's something wrong with me because I can't seem to get ahead." James nodded knowingly. "I used to think that too. But you know what I learned while I was bouncing from job to job. Staying on different couches, he turned to look directly at Emma. Being poor doesn't make us worthless. We're still good people trying our best. Emma felt something shift inside her chest. Like a weight she had been carrying for years suddenly became lighter. I never thought about it that way, she said quietly. I met so many people in the same situation. James continued. Good, hardworking. People who were just trying to survive. The woman who cleaned offices with me had 2 kids and was studying to be a nurse. The guy who delivered packages with me was saving money to start his own business. We weren't failures. We were fighters. Emma looked out the window at the familiar landscape of her childhood. The rolling hills and stone walls looked exactly the same as they had when she was a child. But she felt different looking at them now. James was right. Her worth wasn't measured by her bank account or her job title. I've been so focused on what I don't have that I forgot about what I do have, Emma said. I have people who love me. I have skills. I have determination. Those things matter more than money. As the train pulled into their hometown station, both Emma and James gathered their belongings with new resolve. They had started the journey feeling ashamed and defeated, but they were arriving home with a different perspective. Thank you, Emma said to James as they prepared to leave the train. You helped me remember who I really am. James smiled. You helped me too. Good luck with your Nan. They stepped off the train together, ready to face their families with new courage. Emma stepped off the train onto the familiar platform of her hometown station. The small building looked exactly the same as it had when she was a child, with its red brick walls and old-fashioned clock tower. But everything felt different now because she was seeing it through the eyes of someone who had been away for too long. She scanned the small crowd of people waiting for passengers, and her heart jumped when she saw a familiar figure standing near the entrance. Her mum, Helen, was there with graying hair and worry lines round her eyes that Emma didn't remember from 2 years ago. Helen was wearing her favorite blue cardigan and clutching a tissue in her hand. The moment their eyes met, Helen rushed forward with tears streaming down her face. She wrapped Emma in a hug so tight that Emma could barely breathe. But she didn't want her mum to let go. All the years of distance, all the phone calls she hadn't made, all the visits she had avoided, everything melted away in that embrace. I'm sorry I stayed away so long, Emma whispered into her mum's shoulder, her own tears flowing freely now. You're here now, love. That's all that matters, Helen replied, her voice thick with emotion. She pulled back to look at Emma's face, touching her cheek gently. You look tired, but you're still my beautiful girl. Helen drove Emma straight to the hospital in her old blue car. They didn't talk much during the short drive, but Helen kept reaching over to squeeze Emma's hand, as if she needed to make sure Emma was really there. Emma looked out the window at the familiar streets of her childhood, the corner shop where she used to buy sweets, the park where she learned to ride her bike, the school where she had made her first friends dot at the hospital. Emma's stomach was filled with butterflies as they walked down the long corridor to her Nan's room. The smell of antiseptic and the sound of machines beeping brought back memories of visiting her granddad in this same hospital years ago. Emma wasn't sure what to expect when she saw Rose. But when they entered the room, Rose was sitting up in bed, looking weak but alert. Her white hair was neatly combed, and she was wearing the pink nightgown that Emma had sent her for Christmas 2 years ago. The moment Rose saw Emma, her face lit up with pure joy. My beautiful girl, Rose said, her voice soft but filled with love. She reached out with shaky hands, and Emma rushed to her side, taking those familiar hands in her own. I knew you'd come home. Emma felt her heart break and heal at the same time. Rose looked smaller and more fragile than Emma remembered, but her eyes were still bright with the same warmth and wisdom that had guided Emma through childhood. "I missed you so much, Nan," Emma said, sitting in the chair beside the bed. Over the next few days, Emma barely left Rose's side. She slept in the uncomfortable hospital chair, eat cafeteria food, and spent hours just talking with her Nan. Rose seemed to grow stronger with Emma there, and the doctors were pleased with her progress. During those long hours together, Rose shared stories that Emma had never heard before. She told Emma about her own struggles as a young woman, how she had worked in textile factories during the war, standing for 12 hours a day in dangerous conditions for very little pay. "I was younger than you are now when your granddad went off to war," Rose said, her eyes distant with memory. "I had to raise 3 children alone, grow vegetables in the garden to feed them, and work in the factory to pay rent. There were nights I cried myself to sleep, wondering how I would manage." Emma listened in amazement. She had always seen her Nan as strong and unshakable, but Rose had faced poverty and hardship that made Emma's struggles seem small in comparison. "How did you get through it?" Emma asked. Rose smiled and patted Emma's hand. "Life knocked me down many times, love. But I learned that strength isn't about never falling. It's about getting back up and helping others do the same." Rose told Emma about the neighbors who shared food when money was tight, the other women at the factory who looked out for each other, and the small acts of kindness that had carried her through the darkest times. "Every generation faces challenges," Rose said. "Your mum had her struggles raising you and your brother. You're having your struggles now. But we survive because we have each other." Emma understood that her struggles were part of a bigger story. Every generation faced challenges, but love and family helped them survive. She wasn't alone in her difficulties. She was part of a long line of strong women who had faced hard times and overcome them. Rose's recovery was slow but steady. Each day, she seemed a little stronger, a little more like her old self. The doctors were amazed by her progress and told Emma that having family close by had made all the difference. They said Rose's will to live had grown stronger since Emma came home, and her body was responding to that inner strength. Emma had planned to return to London after a week. But as she watched her Nan getting better, she realized she didn't want to leave again. London had never felt like home anyway. It had been a place where she struggled alone, worked jobs she didn't enjoy, and felt disconnected from everything that mattered to her. One evening, as she sat beside Rose's hospital bed, Emma made a decision that surprised even herself. "Nan, I think I'm going to stay in Manchester," she said. "I want to be close to you and Mum." Rose's eyes filled with tears of joy. "Are you sure, love? What about your job in London?" "I'll find something here," Emma said with more confidence than she felt. "I don't want to miss any more time with the people I love." When Rose was discharged from the hospital 2 weeks later, Emma had already started looking for work. She found a job at the local community centre, helping people navigate the new travel and technology systems that had confused her so much at the train station. The pay was modest, much less than what she had earned in London, but Emma felt rich in purpose. Her work involved helping elderly people understand digital health passes, teaching immigrants how to use the new travel apps, and guiding confused travelers through the various scanning systems. Every day, she remembered how lost she had felt and how much Mary's kindness had meant to her. To Emma's surprise, James, her friend from the train, had also decided to stay in town. His father was recovering well from his heart attack, and James had found work at a local garage, They met for a coffee one afternoon and discovered they both wanted to help other people who were struggling the way they had. "What if we started a support group?" James suggested, "for young people facing financial hardship, people who feel like they're failing at life." Emma loved the idea. They approached Mary, the station volunteer, who was excited to help. Mary had connections throughout the community and knew many people who could benefit from such a group. Their first meeting was held in a small room at the community center. 7 people came, some unemployed, some working multiple jobs to make ends meet, some living with family because they couldn't afford their own places. Emma was nervous as she stood up to speak. "We're proof that struggling doesn't mean failing," Emma told the group. "We're all just trying to build better lives, one day at a time. The most important thing is that we're not alone." The group grew quickly. Word spread through social media, and soon people were driving from neighboring towns to attend their weekly meetings. Emma started sharing her story online, writing about her journey from shame and isolation to acceptance and community. Her message was simple but powerful. Love is always waiting for you to come home. People began reaching out to family members they hadn't spoken to in years. Emma received hundreds of messages from people who had been inspired to reconnect with their loved ones. One message came from a woman in Scotland who had been estranged from her daughter for 5 years over a financial disagreement. After reading Emma's story, she had called her daughter and discovered that her grandchild had been born 6 months earlier. Another came from a man in Wales who had reconnected with his elderly parents after years of feeling too ashamed of his divorce to face them. 6 months after Emma had first returned home, she received a promotion at the community center. She was now the coordinator for family support services, helping people in crisis situations. Her salary was enough to rent a small apartment just 10 minutes from her mum's house every Sunday. Emma took Rose out for tea at their favorite cafe in town. Rose had regained most of her strength and loved hearing about Emma's work and the support group. They would sit by the window, sharing stories and watching the world go by. One evening, Emma stood in Rose's garden, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of pink and gold. The same flowers that Rose had tended for decades were blooming round her: roses, lavender, and the vegetable patch that had fed the family during difficult times. Emma realized that sometimes the journey home isn't about the place you return to. It's about finding peace with you. She had spent years running from her problems, but coming home had taught her that her worth wasn't measured by her bank account or her job title. It was measured by the love she gave and received, the help she offered to others, and the connection she made with her community. The journey home had changed everything.